Okay, awesome. So it is 5 after the hour. I will start the presentation here. I will go over and show you guys. So here's the agenda for today. We will first start with a poll, which will give us an idea of the makeup of the group. You will get this some questions on the screen. Please select the most pertinent one and then click submit. We will start the panel discussion. It'll be maybe 30 minutes, I think, and I will leave plenty of time at the end because I know that questions do come in and we want to make sure that we address all of them. I love having an interactive kind of session. I don't like when somebody's speaking the whole time because it becomes really boring. So you'll notice that I will go into a quick introduction of myself, the company, and then introduce the panel. So first things first, let's pull up this poll and have you guys vote. I'll have Charles help me post this question.
Yep, so you should see it now. It should be, yeah, so it should be populating now. We'll give you about 30, 40 seconds to answer this question. The question is your organization borderless? Select one of the following. No, and we do not have plans to become borderless. No, but we do want to become borderless in the future. Yes, we are in 2 countries currently. Yes, we are in 3 to 5 countries currently. And yes, we are in 6 or more countries currently. Give it about 15 more seconds here. It's like about 80% of you have voted so far. All right, nice. I'm going to go ahead and close it here and share the results. Lona, can you see the results on your screen?
I can, yeah. Okay. So it looks like the majority is in over 3 countries, so anywhere from 3 to 6. And this is really cool. Only 11% says no, and we do not have plans to become borderless. I love that, that some people will say that. Okay, very cool. All right. Okay, so let's go to presenting here. I want to introduce myself. My name is Lona Alia. I am the head of revenue here at Safety Wing. I am also a Y Combinator founder myself, an advisor to many different startups. And also I'd like to call myself an original remote worker because I started working remotely maybe about 10 years ago, right out of college. I had this big dream. I wanted to see the world. I wanted to see all 178 countries that are out there, depending who's counting. There could be 205 countries in the world. I really wanted to take work with me. So at the time, it was really strange that someone that is, let's say, employed in New York would ask their manager to work from Paris. And that's exactly what I did because I was spending the summers in Paris at the time. And I convinced my manager to do it, but it was seen as an exception and not the rule. So with that, I was able to take my work everywhere and visit about 80 countries of the world. I lived in 4 different continents, and I really enjoyed this remote life. So I'm really glad that now, post-pandemic, remote work is not only possible, it is also more efficient. So we're seeing more and more companies being built remotely from day one. We're seeing more and more companies go remote, like PwC announced a couple weeks ago. All 40,000 of their members are going to be remote. So I definitely think it is the future. Sorry, my presentation goes blank. Perfect. I do think it's the future, and I'm super excited to talk to you about you know, how we can unlock and find the top talent in the world to get the most passionate people to join our companies and work with us. So who is Safety Wing? We're obviously hosting this panel, and Safety Wing, we're building this global social safety net for remote workers and distributed teams. What that means in plain words is that we offer these cross-border benefits that cover remote workers in over 185 countries. We started out with remote health, which is a fully equipped health insurance that travels with you wherever you go. So whether you're a nomad or a remote worker that wants to live in different countries, you can do so, or whether you're a company that's hiring multiple different people from different countries, instead of getting an insurance policy per that country, you can just get one policy. It'll cover all your members. We will offer remote doctor coming up very soon, as well as remote retirement, so you can save up and live anywhere in the world, as well as life insurance and income protection to really round out that global benefits package. So having said that, I want to go in and introduce the panelists, and you guys can turn on your video. So maybe we can start out with Rajiv, and then Andrea and Martin.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rajiv. I'm the founder and CEO of Tandem, which is a virtual office for remote, distributed, and hybrid teams. So it's a desktop app and a mobile app where you can see your teammates, you can see who's online, you can see what they're doing, get a sense of who's talking with who, and you can talk in one click, just like being in the same room. And my co-founders and I, we were part of startups that were acquired by Yahoo, and then afterwards we started a company. And both my co-founders had kids. So we went from working in person every day to working remotely, and we felt that gap. And so that's how we started working on this problem. And while it's been, really, there have been a lot of transitions that have happened over the past year. I'm really optimistic with how the workplace is evolving and how people are breaking their assumptions of what you need in a physical workplace in order to get collaboration. So very excited to be here, very excited to hear your questions.
Thank you. Andrea?
Well, hi, everyone. Very excited to be here today. So I'm Andrea Carlon, Director for Business Development at Lano. Lano is a startup based in Berlin, headquartered in Berlin, but we're pretty much fully remote or remote first company. What we do is we have a product that helps businesses across the world hire, manage and pay employees no matter what they are. So under whether they're contingent workforce such as freelancers, whether they are in a country where the company doesn't have a legal entity, or if the client does have a legal entity and therefore they're looking to outsource the payroll. So we're helping global expansion. Just a bit about myself. My career before starting in business was in law, so I actually was a lawyer, so it might be helpful for some of the compliance questions today. And then I spent most of my career in the US working in business development / partnerships. And I'm very excited to be with Safety Wing today. And I guess during the webinar, we'll be talking about how we're connected, all of us.
Yes, perfect. Thank you, Andrea. And Martin?
Thank you, Lona, for inviting. Hi, everybody. So my name is Martin Beck. I'm German citizen. I have lived in the south of Germany, then later many years also in Berlin. Now for quite some years, I'm living in Barcelona. And I work in HR, well, in recruitment, better said, since 2011, before some professional experience as well in HR development. I worked before in more traditional recruitment companies. Since 2014, I've been to Catenon in different roles. Nowadays, I'm business unit director. And Catenon is a Spanish company, international company, and was founded in 2000 and was quite a pioneer in remote and global hiring. So Catenon has been working since 2000 remotely, globally, and has quite some expertise in that sense. And I'm happy to be here today with the rest of the team, let's say.
Thank you, Martin. I think that's really great. And I think to put this all together for you guys, the reason that we are all here in this panel is that we partner with each other. So Andrea, that works for Lano, we are the global benefits partner for Lano. So if you were to want to hire somebody on their platform, you can then compliantly give benefits to them, which is, health insurance from Safety Wing. And also with Martin, it would make sense to basically, get the right person and have a recruiter to do this in a data-driven way. And with Rajiv, he was in our Building Remotely podcast. speaking with our founders and CEO. And we want to invite him here because as we are working from different places of the world, what is that remote office look like? And that's why having everyone here and give their perspective would be really helpful because they have been in the space for quite some time, and hopefully it will answer some questions that you do have. Great. So having said that, I would like to go into the questions. And the first one I have is, what is the competitive advantage hiring remotely and globally? Maybe I can have one of you start that off.
Yeah, I can maybe start and just give my impression. I mean, it's hard to say maybe what are the advantages, because we at Catalan, we have been working, we have done this all over the years, and we are very used to that since 2000. So we have been working remotely internally. That means we have recruitment platforms in different countries, and people, well, our employees, they are able to work remotely since many years, even before the pandemic. And then, of course, also we work remotely with our candidates, so no need to physically meet us. This is also something we have done before the pandemic. That is important. And then, obviously, with our clients, we're also working remotely with them, and we have online tools for that. And so, in the end, the advantage, I think, it makes life much more easier, yeah, for us, for our candidates, and of course also for our clients. Of course, there are many advantages associated, I think, with global hiring and the remote hiring process. I mean, there are so many business opportunities, first of all, right? I mean, none of us would exist in the end because Catalan, Lano, Tandem, also the safety wing, we all have a business model based on global hiring, on remote hiring. And I think there's so many business opportunities still to come, so many things to do and to discover. So I think, first of all, it's a huge opportunity to build business on, right? Then I think there are many more advantages associated with that. I think if you hire globally, if you hire people remotely, your organization becomes more intelligent, because in the end, it's about cultural enrichedness, right? It's about diversity. And if you have diverse people, you have different point of views. And that makes also that you can challenge your organization, that you can challenge point of views, traditional point of views. And I think in the end, if you break up normal ways of thinking, then you have kind of disruptive thinking. And that in the end creates, again, new business opportunities. So in that sense, I think there are many advantages, yeah, of recruiting and hiring in the end, not only recruiting, but hiring globally and remotely.
That's great. Rajiva, Andrea, do you want to add anything? Or
I'd love to add one thing, actually. I completely agree with Martin's points. I think the one that we see the most at Lano and kind of the clients that we're servicing is accessing bigger talent pools. So to give you an example, if you're a Berlin startup and you're surrounded by other companies that are raising, and the same happens in Silicon Valley, right? Like you're in a pool that is highly competitive. You might not be able to benchmark salaries. You might not be able to be competitive. So just accessing a bigger talent pool and being kind of agnostic to geography, I think that's massive. So we talk to companies every day that are like, I need a candidate that has these skills and that have these languages. For example, I can now look into like lots of different countries, like I'm not limited. And I also bring opportunities to other places in the world, which is like a really beautiful thing to think about. I like that aspect, that aspirational aspect, right? Of bringing opportunities to people that might not necessarily have them.
yeah,
it's a great point, Andrea, because in fact, this is also what we do. We do work with a lot of German companies, and it's very hard for them to find tech talent, developers maybe also. And then we build tech cubes in different geographical areas, maybe in Spain, maybe in the south of Europe in general. So I think it's a huge opportunity to have a bigger talent pool. Then also, I mean, in the end, I think it makes the decision process more agile. It makes the decision process quicker. And I think it's also a good opportunity to have better decisions, because if I, for instance, even for myself, I recruit, I involve people who are in Berlin, I involve in the decision process people who are in Madrid, who are in Barcelona, and different places. And that is all only possible in the end through a remote and global process.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you mentioned that, Andrea. I mean, I think access to global talent is by far it's the strongest reason, and talent is becoming global very, very quickly. Like I think about just a couple of years ago in our Y Combinator batch, I believe half of the founders were born outside the US. And I think that that number has climbed even higher in recent years. I'm half Filipino, and so over the past year, I've been tracking the explosion of Filipino startups, and it's happened very quickly as some top startups like PayMongo start to grow and create an ecosystem where people leave the company and become founders of their own companies. And at this point, I think global talent is exploding far faster than the global job market. And so the more we can go international, the more we can both the companies and the people around the world can benefit.
Definitely, I love that. And then just one sentence from our side. The reason I love hiring remotely or getting a global team is that you'll find the best person for the job and the most passionate person that really is in line with your mission and your vision and helps you build that really great team at the end. So yeah, going borderless, it opens up that pool completely. Great. So then what are some of the challenges that you guys are seeing when you hire remotely? I know a lot of the tools we can use. So for us, there's no challenges hiring remotely. But I'm curious to see from your side of things, what do you see as challenges? And maybe the audience can also chime in if you guys are seeing some challenges that we can solve for you today.
For me, I think it's very clear, probably hiring. So we'll talk about it a bit later. I know that we've got some questions around compliance coming up, but I would say that's probably the biggest one, at least with the types of companies that we're talking. But I'd love to hear like other panelist opinions, because clearly mine is kind of Lano driven.
Yeah, I mean, mine is obviously as well, right? Seeing a lot of basically the advantages, but it's true that if you have processes just based on remote and hiring, in the end, I mean, it can be a challenge to build a team, right? I mean, you need to transmit the culture of your company, you need to create a team spirit. And it's also, I think it's necessary to create a personal contact. And this is something maybe that can be a challenge. And in the beginning, you have also intercultural differences you need to integrate. So I think there are challenges. But I mean, the advantages, from my point of view, are much higher.
Yeah, Martin, maybe like culture by design rather than by default is kind of one that we've seen that companies have to make that decision, right? Because like if you don't do anything, the culture is just not going to come remotely. It has to be a decision. That's one that I've heard from founders mention quite a lot.
Yeah. But in the end, I think there's no choice. I mean, because the pressure of change is so strong. I think there's no choice anymore, right? In being global, in offering remote work and offering remote processes. I mean, the pressure of change, from my point of view, is just too strong. Yeah.
Yes.
There's no way back in the end.
Yeah, Rajiv, did you have something before I say something?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd agree that there's no choice anymore. For most companies, even before the pandemic, every company at some scale becomes distributed, right? You have multiple offices around the world, even multiple buildings in the same campus. People start meeting remotely. Teams start being split across different cities and different countries. And so, at some scale, every company was always distributed, and now there really is no choice. And as we talked about, the benefits are many, but there are lots of problems as you scale an organization remotely. A lot of it we experience it in different ways. So people will experience the loss of the connective tissue in the company, or units of the company acting more independently, which could be good, or it could be a lack of coordination. And higher employee churn, like we've seen the great resignation this year. And it's not, I don't think it's entirely due to the hiring market. There's an underlying kind of law of human interaction that I think explains a lot of this. And that's just how quickly does trust build in different media. So we know from studies at Google that trust in an organization is speed. Like psychological safety, that feeling of group trust is the greatest single determining factor to organizational speed, as well as being the thing that makes work, fun and makes you feel like you're together with the team. And unfortunately, trust builds a bit slower in video versus in person. It builds a bit slower in audio versus in person. They both eventually reach in-person levels. It just takes a little longer. Now, trust over chat or asynchronous communication actually never gets to the same level, which is quite scary. And so what that means is, yeah.
I don't know if I'll maybe disagree with you in politely, but seeing GitLab, which is an async culture, go from 0 to IPO in just like 5 years, and it's also a classmate of ours, so I see Y Combinator, it proves that also, why async work can definitely work really well. For ourselves at Safety Wing, I love that we built trust from day one, and also I had a team of 14 people that I led. And I built that team from 0 to 14 in 9 months. Trust was given to them right away, and they felt that trust. And the whole team stayed with us, and they're still there. So we haven't had anyone resign. So I would also challenge that thought that, of course, it is a bit harder to build, but I think if you're built for this kind of type of work, which a lot of us are, especially if you're, nomadic or you have lived in different countries, which I think the world is going towards that way because everyone is becoming an explorer and they have the means to do so nowadays. I think that it is possible to do so completely at the start and build a big organization that way. But that's my thoughts.
I actually can't disagree with that. I just kind of contextualize what you're saying. I actually I talked with Patrick Collison about their remote practices in Stripe before the pandemic. They were opening a 5th engineering hub. They were looking very closely at GitLab. And the thing he told me was, we have to hire people who have worked remotely before, because it is such a cultural shift to develop those bonds, develop that trust, develop the processes and the discipline and the connection remotely, that they felt it was difficult to make that shift. And now we've seen everybody can make that shift with varying degrees of success.
Yes.
But I would say that that's not, that you're working around trust. You're being more intentional to create trust in a better way. You're doing things like offsite. You're using a virtual office to help facilitate those spontaneous interactions. Yeah. And I think that these are the types of things that organizations need to do to exist in a world where if you do nothing, if you don't change your culture consciously, if you don't use better tools to encourage collaboration, if you don't think about it intentionally, if you don't set culture intentionally, people will not come together of their own accord, or at least most people won't. And I think that's a big challenge moving into
just
this.
Just a fun fact. Sorry, Andrea, I'll let you go in a second. But Patrick Collison is one of the co-founders of Stripe. They're 2 brothers. If you guys, I've met them as well many years ago when their company wasn't worth $100 billion. And it's amazing to see how far they've come. The 2 19-year-old twins went through Y Combinator, and the company now is one of the most valuable companies in the world. So just have to say
we're big fans of Stripe at Lano. Certainly, we look at them a lot. I just wanted to add that actually, I think that if you look at messaging standalone, I definitely would agree that alone it doesn't build the trust. I think in conjunction with other tools, and that's why recently, actually, this is kind of fun thing. I noticed that Slack now has some features for voice and video. And I think it might be kind of, related to what you were just saying, because the voice generates more trust than, for example, a written message, because you can't, that thing. Anyway, just wanted to add that.
Good point.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point. You mentioned, Rajiv, trust is very important, and the speed of trust in an organization, as we know, is amazing. But I think that the challenge is indeed to work on that trust. It's not something you need to be aware of that. That's a key point, and you need to invest in that. And from my experience, we have done it Catalan even before the pandemic, because we have all been able to work remotely many years before. We have done some very significant outdoors, and we got people together from all over the world and met for 2 days and had some good workshops and good fun. And that has really it was really fun, first of all, but we had really benefited a lot from that, because that's really building trust and seeing each other. And of course, there are many other models. I mean, even the product and the service you offer, right, Rajiv? But I think from my point of view, you can combine that, with a hybrid model. You can combine it with outdoors. There are many things maybe who can help you to change and to shift from a team written in not capital letters to team in a capital letter, right? And build trust. But that's a challenge. I really think it's a challenge.
And Martin, I'm actually interested on what you're seeing in the hiring market, especially at the executive level, because maintaining trust, as we've seen from studies, this is a study out of University of Michigan, well before the pandemic, but because of this law of how quickly trust builds, it's much easier to maintain relationships than it is to build new ones. And I think this is the most obvious explanation for why we see the Great Resignation, why people don't feel like they're part of the teams that they joined in the last year, why they don't feel as connected with their coworkers. And I'm wondering how you're seeing that play out in the hiring market.
I mean, the hiring market, of course, there is a high demand. The demand for remote work is amazing, right? I mean, because there is the pandemic that has changed significantly, and then this will never change again. But it's not enough just to offer remote work. It's about it's a question itself how to become attractive, right, to candidates. That's it, and that has changed completely what it means being attractive now, and maybe what that means maybe in the past. Being attractive for talent. Yeah, that has changed a lot. And in that sense, a company, it's about being human. It's about creating opportunities to meet, to interact, maybe offering events.
Employer branding.
Branding. It's about values, purpose, vision. Being part of something bigger. So there are many things, but it's a key point. Yeah.
It is, yeah. And actually, I can add to that that what we see is that benefits are a big part of it. So a lot of companies will say, well, we're hiring remotely, but one of our challenges is like, one, how do I pay them? How do I hire them? Lana can solve that. How do I track them? Catalan can do that. And then how do I pay them, or like, how do I give them the best benefits? And the number one benefit is health insurance. And before solving this, people are like, how do I go about doing that? That sounds really difficult to figure out all these benefits of all these countries and not be completely bogged down by all the details and the paperwork. So definitely having really good benefits makes a difference. I know at Safety Wing we meet, 4 times a year, up to 4 times a year. We just met in Slovenia for a week, and it was amazing. It was the first time many of us met in person. And the cool part was that because we do a lot of like video and have an office in the cloud, like with Tandem, I found that everyone was the same as I thought they would be. So the cool part was that it wasn't just like a practice. Yeah, it wasn't like, oh, you're so different than what I saw on video. So the cool thing is that technology is so far advanced that we can trust each other on video and on voice, and we can build these relationships completely in the other side of the world. And you don't have to be tied to one place, one office, one way of thinking. And there are solutions in the market to really combat those challenges that do come up. So I think that's why all of us here are together, because everybody is kind of like solving a different problem in the remote world. Great. So with that, if you guys, we're at 34 minutes after the hour, I'd like to start taking some questions. But before I do that, I do want to go into compliance because this is very important, and a lot of questions will come for this. It's how can I hire compliantly? How do I streamline the hiring process? Where do I start? I have no idea. Is it really legal to do so? Do I need to open offices in all different countries? And I know as a founder, I did open offices in different countries for my startup in the past, but now I know that I don't have to. So maybe I'll let Andrea take that since she's a lawyer as well.
Certainly happy to address that. First off, don't open entities around the world. That's going to be very costly, time consuming, and a headache. And if you're a founder, former founder like Lana, you're probably going to struggle, because I think even with the pandemic, we've seen like, admin setups have been delayed. It's really tricky to do it without being able to travel. So there's solutions, and I think my number one kind of advice, based on the founders that we talk to, kind of early stage startups, I would always say, think about compliance early on. Don't wait until being in the kind of 50 employee stage or 100 employees, or when it's requested or demanded from investors. We've seen that as well. And it's always a struggle, because you're like, oh, now I have all these setups. Are they compliant? Are they not? How do I manage this whole bulk? So I would always recommend, like, just from the beginning, look at the setups that you have. So when you're working with freelancers, just make sure that you're doing some sort of scrutiny, due diligence, in terms of what their setup are. Where are they? Are they in high-risk countries? Are they in low-risk countries? And by risk, I mean, like, how tough are the authorities of those countries with employee misclassification? Think about, what type of contracts do they have? Have I checked whether they're actually independent contractors? Are they registered as an independent contractor in the authorities? That's not the case across the globe. Are there any kind of local frameworks for that? So to give you an example, like, I love to cite Ukraine as an example, where lots and lots of people, I'd say more than 90% of the people that work in tech are contractors in Ukraine. Why? Because there's a government, like a private entrepreneur program, and whether you have a contract that is compliant to those rules, that's going to make a difference, right? When an authority kind of goes and looks at it. So don't wait for the audit. Don't wait for that to happen, and think about those things. I'd say that's kind of one way to mitigate and streamline the risk. And then obviously, use tools, and kind of some of the technologies that are out there to help out.
And then what do you recommend in terms of like contractors or employees? How should one, hire them, classify them, and by you, how do they like mitigate that risk of misclassifying?
That's $1 billion question, the one that we're all working. So there's actually not and I've talked to a lot of customers that we work with, and there's not a straight answer. So you have to look at it case by case, because obviously each country has, as I was saying, a different level of risk. There's things like contract management softwares, like the one that Lano has, which can help, because we've got localized contracts. We have things that allow you to do digital signature, smart contracts with kind of dynamic variable templates. So we give you the template, and then you kind of include the different fields based on your situation. And then, of course, we've got these templates that we regularly review. We have them in several languages. Sometimes, you want to have an employee with their local language, but you want to have that contract also in your language. So in both languages. And just generally kind of working with tech providers that have a solid back end of providers or kind of partner network of legal and compliance, right? Because there might be cases that are straightforward and great, easy. I've got this contractor, he works for me, like, just to develop this website or these specific projects. But in some cases, it's not clear cut, and then you kind of might need additional legal advice. So having kind of that additional, company that can help you, connect you with entity formation companies, with payroll, to be set up as a foreign employer, which is a super novel solution that a lot of clients are asking us for. So lots of these things.
Okay, and then we actually
And
have a question on the chat. So did you have something, Rajiv?
oh yeah, I was going to ask about equity and granting equity to employees. Do you have any advice or common pitfalls there when you have a global workforce?
That's a very good one. So generally speaking, we tend to look at this kind of country by country base. Typically, if our experience is when you're hired under an EOR model, so employer of record, which for those on the audience, it's essentially when I want to hire a full-time employee in a country where I don't have a legal entity, and therefore I outsource the whole compliance contracts. Those contracts actually are, or the employees is in paper legally employed by someone else, in this case by Lano, and then Lano takes over the whole payrolling, etc. In those cases, we typically allow companies and we encourage companies to offer equity, but it's always kind of as a side letter. So it's a direct contract between the client and the employee. Which is not the case for the employment contract, because the employment contract is always local. That being said, there's no general rule, and I'm always cautious when mentioning this, because it can be done, but you always have to look at the specific situation of the employee, the specific country where they're being employed, and what's the risk appetite as well of the client, the business that wants to hire. Yeah, but it's a common practice, I would say.
Great.
And-
So did you have another question?
Oh yeah, I was wondering, since we have everybody here, what are you also using for like compensation, like assessing the market? With the market changing so quickly and going global, are people using PAVE, option impact? Like what's useful?
Well, actually, my question, I was going to ask this question to the panel was, with people now moving around the world, do you pay like one flat salary, and do you tie that to a certain city like San Francisco, or do you pay different kind of salaries? How are you guys handling that? At Safety Wing, we pay the same salary to everyone. It's not a San Francisco salary, but it's somewhere in between. And we've seen that fosters a lot of trust within the team members, and it does away with a lot of the questions like, well, I wonder how much he or she is getting paid. But it's still not, I don't know if it's a perfect solution, but it is a solution that we've implemented, and we're open to possibly, looking at different things in the future. What have you guys seen or?
I mean, I'm happy to elaborate on what we do at Lano kind of internally. We offer what's competitive. So if we have a candidate that is good, we would pay them that salary independently of where they are. From a client perspective, what we've seen, because obviously we have access to massive amounts of data of compensation, we've seen that it really depends. It really varies. It varies in terms of position. So we've seen that there's markets that are super competitive to hire, tech people. So in those markets, generally speaking, what we've seen from clients is they'll tap into those talent pools because it makes sense. It's also kind of there's an incentive from a cost perspective. So those places, those regions typically will have local salaries. That being said, it depends. Like the more senior you go, the more balanced out those salaries are. So it doesn't really matter so much. And then again, it also depends on the client. Typically, if it's like a startup, kind of funded, VC funded, that changes a bit as well.
I would agree. For the higher the positions are, the more management positions maybe are involved, the more balanced it could get. But from my, let's say, just information that I have, because we work with many companies all over the world in many different sectors, most of our clients, in fact, they make a differentiation between different geographical location. They would definitely take that into account and would not pay an equal salary or would not offer equal benefits to all or to everybody. So what we can see from the market is that there is very much still differentiation. In fact, I also wanted to add here that in fact that the expectations are different. I mean, it really depends where the candidates are based, because the expectations are getting, let's say, built locally because people live somewhere, right? And then the surrounding, the family, the friends, and the whole society that is surrounding is locally different, and the expectations are different, especially in terms of the benefits. I mean, and what is attractive in terms of the benefits can be interesting in Madrid, but maybe not in Germany, Munich, and that's very different in the end. And you may be in Spain, people, they ask for private health insurance. It's very important for them. In other countries, they need a car. If they don't get a car, they need a car. But maybe in urban environments, it's maybe more mobility vouchers. So I think it depends a lot on the local expectations. This is what I wanted to say. They're quite different. They're quite different, and I think it's really a challenge sometimes to take care of that, to find a solution for organization to be so flexible, let's say, to offer different kind of benefits.
That's a good idea for the product team of Lano, just to tell them some suggestions around what's locally typical from a benefits perspective in this region.
Yeah,
I love that. Yeah,
that would be really cool, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of work for your team, yeah.
As we get more globalized, you know, people they know what they're worth, and I think the higher up they go and how well they perform, then you look more like, okay, how much do I need to keep this person on board versus how much is local for them, right? So, and also people are mobile these days, and you have to also account for that. It's not just like, you know, they started in one country, but then they end up in another country. What do? Do you like up the salary and down it? So those are also some other considerations to keep in mind. But yeah, I mean, we have 14 minutes left. You guys can put some questions on the chat. I do have at least one question. Actually, there's a lot more. The first one I have is, how do we find out which companies are high risk? So maybe this is for you, Andrea, but I don't know what they mean by this, because companies are
companies or countries?
Yep.
Maybe
Lona, it was countries. I clarified that.
Okay.
It is countries. They meant to say countries in there.
That's also the second billion-dollar question. So typically what we recommend, again, we're not a consulting firm, right? So we're a product company, and we're trying to build something, you know, something that can solve a challenging problem and a complex problem in a simple way. And that's something that it's difficult, right? Because with compliance, you're talking about regulations, laws, which are changing all the time. They're complex to understand. You typically have to go to lawyers and get, you know, pay high fees to get those explained. What we typically see is, generally speaking, in Europe, there's countries that are high risk. So for example, Germany is one. Most founders are very familiar with the German case, and that's because the authorities have, you know, gone after a lot of these companies for misclassifying. So typically, I would say that look into what the case law is in that country. If there's a lot of litigation around it, or, you know, companies have been fined, that's something that should trigger the risk alert, let's say. It doesn't mean that you know, countries cannot change and become high risk, because ultimately, if there's a big volume of employees being treated as freelancers and not paying taxes, that's basically income that the government is missing. So that's when they could change, and that they could become high risk. But typically, I would recommend always looking at, so in Europe, there's certainly countries that are high risk, like Germany, for example. UK, it's becoming more and more. They recently passed a regulation for freelancers to really like include what are the case, like what's a true freelancer, and really bring that criteria. So look into the specific, look at the different countries you want to hire. That would be my number one recommendation. And then look at the criteria. What legislation do they have? Do I meet this criteria, yes or no? And then obviously, like, use tools like Lano or other platforms that let you kind of devise those checklists. Like, okay, have I asked my contractor if they're a true contractor? Are they registered? So are they working for more than 2 clients, or whatever the criteria may be in that country?
Great. I think, yeah, Charles, do you want to manage the questions? There are quite a few of them, so maybe we want to go.
Yeah, I can kind of start reading them off here. And the first one is, Andrea, you kind of already addressed a portion of it, but I just wanted to read it off here and see if there's anything that you wanted to cover still. Okay, so hiring candidates on an international basis is ideal. However, what if you are not a legal entity in the country? Would a PEO be your only option to ensure you are compliant with the country laws and regulations? In your opinion, is the additional expense of a PEO worth it?
I would say absolutely yes, and not only because I'm obviously that's what our bread and butter at Lano, but there are other solutions. So PEO, some folks in the US typically call it PEO. It can also be referred to as EOR, employer of record or professional employment organization. It's if you ask companies that use it, they'll definitely say yes. I want to hire a candidate in UK, I can do it. Cost is an issue for startups, and I know there's POs out there that charge anywhere between 1,000 and 1.5K a month per employee. That's a significant cost. There's more competitive alternatives, and we're definitely not at that price range. But not going into cost, I think there are alternatives. So in Europe, there's a model called foreign employer. I mentioned it earlier. It's actually a very interesting model because it's about half the price of a PEO. And basically what it lets you do is your company is registered in the tax side with a tax ID in the tax authorities of the country. And you're essentially running like a non-entity payroll. Basically, you don't have an entity, you're registered, someone kind of runs the payroll for you, and the fees for managing that are significantly lower. That's possible to be done in some countries, not in others, but I think that's kind of one alternative that I would give that person in the audience that asked that question.
Perfect. And then Lona, I'm going to just address this one to you because it's a Safety Wing specific question. Somebody curious about whether or not Safety Wing operates in North Africa and Africa.
Yes, we cover most of the countries in Africa. I'm not sure whether we cover, let's say, Sudan, maybe Eritrea. I'm not quite sure. A couple of them maybe, but most of them, yes, we do operate. We cover pretty much all of the world except like certain places like Saudi Arabia. You know, Dubai is one of them, and then yeah, the US is kind of like a separate beast, but pretty much we cover everybody.
I'm just going to go down the list here. Is there a good resource for finding global compliance lists of laws, for example, notice requirements by country?
Yeah, that's a really good one. So happy to jump in. Sorry, there's so many compliance questions. I feel bad for Martin.
Well, it's no wonder why so many of the EORs are like billion-dollar companies because
Exactly.
There's definitely, so we like to call them country guides. A lot of the platforms like Lano have them, and they essentially have, you know, what's the notice period in that country? How many vacation days is the person entitled to, or like statutory requirements around this? What's the minimum pay? How many times per year do I have to pay people by law? So all these sort of things. I'd recommend that they go to the Lano website and hit country guide, and there's like a resource there. If they want something more, let's say, kind of authority driven, the only way to do that is to actually go to the local laws, which is a challenge again because they might not be translated.
Thanks. This one is kind of a broad question, so it's going to be open to everyone here, as everybody has kind of experience with working with different people across varying time zones. So just, can we talk, let's just dive into, you know, what are some of your recommendations for working with teams across different time zones? You know, whether that's collaboration or you know, team meetings or asynchronous work. Let's just dive into that just a little bit.
That's a good question, and I can address that because I can start off. What we recommend at Safety Wing is that you are not in an Asian time zone, just because most of us are in the US and Europe or Latin America and Africa. Therefore, it's much easier to be on those time zones versus in Asia. And we don't do that to discriminate. It's just that you will have a tough time living your life being, you know, asked to have certain meetings at 11 p.m. So we say it's just, you know, you can do that, you can travel, and if your lifestyle allows that, fine, no problem. However, we recommend to be in the kind of like US and Europe time zones, because we meet twice a week, Mondays and Thursdays, for 2 hours each time. So those are mandatory. And the other rest of the time, you're pretty much free to do, you know, your work and not be disturbed. Of course, you will have meetings. So depending what kind of role you have, if you do have meetings, those meetings might coincide or will coincide with US and Europe time zone. So that's what I'd have to say there.
Yeah, I think it is
Yeah,
a challenge. It's a challenge, definitely. Time zones are a challenge for global organizations. I mean, internally, there are many ways to deal with that. Lona just mentioned some. It's also that you can have some joint documents, you can book a Stripe, etc. So there are many things, and it's also not about always to control everything with a lot of trust in the organization. And yeah, different people can work on things, and you put things together. And then on the client side, in fact, it's a big advantage if our company is quite global, and we work as one integrated office, and that means it's good if I have a client in India, in Canada, or wherever, then I have people, and they are just there in the right time zone. So in the end, if you have a global organization, if you integrate it, if you operate as a really single office, and you work together, you have solution for different time zones and time zones, and you work for your clients in the end.
Yeah, time zones are tough, and I think a lot of the solutions boil down to finding the time, carving out the time for really high quality collaboration. And I think really high quality, like real time collaboration is kind of like REM sleep for an organization. You don't need it all the time, but you need it some of the time, and different organizations need different amounts. When you're in the really early stages, like when we talk to, sub 10 person startups going through an accelerator, it's trying to work around time zones with things changing that quickly is a very high price to pay. And so as much as possible, like I just recommend not doing it. But as you get larger, as being a resilient, diverse organization becomes more important than kind of being on the same page every minute of every day, that's when it starts to become worth the trade-off. But it is a very difficult thing to manage.
Okay, and we only have a few minutes left, guys, 3 minutes. So maybe one more question, and then we can address them hopefully afterwards, maybe by email.
Yeah, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask this question, and we can kind of rapid fire some answers to it. And I think it's a fun question anyways. So, but maybe, so this question is, let's see. So basically some recommendations for a tech stack for remote work. So some different things that you can do to hire, collaborate remotely, some different tools that you have. Maybe everybody give their, top 2 or 3.
Yeah,
we'll just go around.
I can shoot mine. So yeah, I guess Slack, Notion, really good as like a internal wiki, Tandem, Teamflow as like your office on the cloud, and then one of these EORs, so like Llano, and some kind of a video async. So yeah, you guys.
Yeah, of course, a virtual office, but I think one thing that's essential is thinking about the modes of work you do, documents, choosing a really good multiplayer apps for these, because multiplayer apps allow you to work together, whether you're hybrid or remote or distributed. So Figma, Notion, there are a ton more. Like every mode of work is going multiplayer. So definitely, if you can move your work into that, it'll be a huge advantage.
We use Confluence, so I know I'm a big fan of Notion. Personally, I use Notion for my team, but then on the company level, we use Confluence. So we still have a bit of a fight there. But I completely agree. I think making information available to everyone, I'm pushing people on Confluence all day. That's like literally, I'm like, it's on Confluence, it's on Confluence. go there. We've got all the projects, everything, and it's super valuable. Of course, all the other ones that you mentioned, Lana, and specifically for the whole hiring and compliance and payments. Yeah, we would be kind of the solution, but I would say probably my pick would be the Confluence Notion kind of tandem. Yeah.
So we have just been working with Google environments for many years, and on one side, and Slack project based, and then we have our own software solutions. In the end, we have a SaaS platform for our recruiters to be able to recycle in terms, well, for the knowledge management, that was very important. And then we have an online platform also for our clients where we share in real-time videos, where we share in real-time questionnaires with candidates, the reports. So in fact, our clients can track the progress, let's say, in real time.
Okay, sorry guys, we have to end. It's on the clock to make sure that we respect everyone's time. I thank you so much for joining us. This was amazing. You will have a recording of this on email, and yeah, let us know if you have any questions. You can email us all directly and find us on LinkedIn. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.